The other day, a viewer asked me a fairly interesting question. They asked me what, in my opinion, is the worst current trend in handguns. I think we're all familiar with trends in firearms. You know, we'll go through a phase where everything's 10 millimeter, or everything's got a threaded barrel, or everything's got a ported barrel, or everything's cut for an RMR. You know, there's trends that we go through in the firearms industry. Some things stick around because they're good ideas. Some things fade away because they're bad ideas. And this question was about what do I think is the current worst idea, the worst trend. Well, I didn't have to think very long and hard about this because I know which one I think is the stupidest, or I should say, the mostest dumbest thing that is a trend now in firearms, and that is the 10 millimeter revolver. I just see no need for a 10 millimeter revolver. Now, I'm not a fan of 9 millimeter revolvers either. I don't like any semi-automatic caliber, put into a revolver. I just don't really see a need for it. But with the 9 millimeters, I at least see that, the 9 millimeter is more powerful than the 38 Special. And if you build a 9 millimeter revolver around the 9 millimeter round, you can actually end up with a smaller gun. So I'll give it a pass. I'll look the other way. It might not be for me, but I can still see what's good about it. But with the 10 millimeter guns, I just don't see any good in them. If you look at a 10 millimeter revolver, like a Smith & Wesson 610, you get 6 shots of 10 millimeter. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's great because it's more powerful than 357 Magnum. It's not more powerful than 357 Magnum. It is a slightly larger bullet, a 357 Magnum, of course, being, 0.357 in diameter, whereas a 10 millimeter is closer to 0.4. It's like 0.39 something. So you do have a slightly larger bullet, but as far as power goes, you're really not going to see any difference in power. If you see any improvement at all, it's going to be with the 357 more so than the 10 millimeter, especially if you're talking about off the rack. If you're just buying your ammo from a local gun shop, you're going to find better 357 Magnum ammo than you do 10 millimeter. Now, if you go to special loadings like Buffalo Bore or Double Tap, especially Double Tap, who tends to load their 10 millimeters hotter, you'll get 10 millimeter that's equal to the 357 Magnum, but you really won't get any greater behavior. You won't get any greater performance. It'll be pretty much the same, or the 357 Magnum will be slightly better. So what's the point of going to the 10 millimeter? Well, some people will be like, well, it's still a bigger bullet, so it's a bigger hole. Well, yeah, it might be a slightly bigger hole, something you're not even going to be able to notice. It's such a small difference. But here's the thing. In the same size guns, because the bullet is a little bit bigger, in the 10 millimeter, you're going to get 6 rounds. Where if you got a 686 from Smith & Wesson and compared to the 610, you get 7 rounds in a similar sized gun. Guns that are almost identical in size and weight. So you might be getting a slightly bigger diameter hole, but you're getting one less hole. So it doesn't work out in the end to be a good idea. So I just don't understand why people would want the 10 millimeter. Plus, even if they were same power, same capacity, everything, you're still dealing with the issues that you have when you put a rimless cartridge into a revolver. They don't eject the same. You got to use moon clips. They're just a problem. So you're not getting any greater ballistics. You're getting less capacity usually, and you're dealing with the issues of a rimless caliber in a revolver when you go 10 millimeter. So I just don't see a point in it. Now, I will say, I guess there is one way that they would make sense. If you're someone who says, the only caliber I'm ever going to buy again, and the only caliber I stock, and the only caliber I'll shoot is 10 millimeter, which if that's the case, you should probably have your head examined, because that's a really stupid idea. If you're someone who does that, I guess it would be better to have a 10 millimeter revolver than have no revolver. So I'll say, okay, in that situation, it makes sense. But, you can create a situation where something makes sense for pretty much anything. I could sit here and make up a scenario where it makes sense to want a horse to sit on my face. But that doesn't mean it's really a good idea to have a horse sit on your face. So I just don't see a point to 10 millimeter revolvers. I just think they're kind of ridiculous. They're just a current trend. Everyone's jumping on that 10 millimeter bandwagon like they did several years ago, and then it went away and became 40, and then now it's back to the 10 and blah, blah, blah. But 357 Magnum is still going to be a better round for you in a revolver. And here's the thing. If you want a more powerful one, if you're someone who still believes that the 10 millimeter is more powerful than the 357 Magnum, well then, instead of getting a 610 in 10 millimeter, go get yourself a Ruger or something similar and get a 41 Magnum. The 41 Magnum is going to have the same capacity, be in a similar size gun, and be hotter and more powerful than the 10 millimeter. So even when you're looking at it just from power standpoint, even if you believe the 10 millimeter is more powerful than 357 Magnum, you still got better options. So like I said, when it comes to what I think is the mostest, dumbest handgun trend today, it's easily 10 millimeter revolvers.